West coast of Florida,
Oh, Tampa?
north. So they're there. But my other son is a free spirit and is up in Maine 8.5 months of the year managing the largest rock campground in the country, and then comes and camps with us. And he had all the paramedic license. I was lucky.
All right, everybody, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming. This is our typical crowd when we have these events, about 5 or 6 people.
Crowd being the operative term.
Yeah, there's things of this. We are recording this, however, for the community. So we have another session on Thursday at noon, and we'll see about maybe setting up a nighttime session. We've heard from a couple of people about that as well, so we'll look through that. But I'm Carl Stevens. I'm your general manager. We have several of our board directors scattered about here too. So if y'all could introduce yourselves and then staff. So go ahead.
I'm Jason Summers. This is my 3rd year on the board.
And Vicki McElreath, and it's my first year on the board.
And I'm Patty Morgan, and I am off the board from last year, but an ex officio.
I'm Bill Ansley, 2nd year of the board, and I'm your treasurer.
Don Roselle, second year on the board, president.
Kimberly McDowell, Executive Administrator.
Lynn Lewis, Communications Director.
Hi, I'm Emily Evans. I'm the Community Engagement Director.
And since we have such few residents, why don't y'all introduce yourselves real quick? Just give us your names.
Jerry Clark, emigre from MIT.
Thank you.
Tina Roberti.
Lisa Olson.
Leslie Keene.
Bob Roaches.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. I appreciate it. What we plan on doing is running through, this is the packet that we emailed out yesterday afternoon. I've got about 9 slides. I just want to run through these real quick, and then we will open it up for questions after we get through that. Key things we wanted to point out is we heard loud and clear during the annual dues vote, after the annual dues vote, during the focus groups, and from the survey that we put out recently, these things. Reduce the increase and spread it more evenly over 3 years. So that's what we've done with this proposal. Focus TLA resources on maintaining the infrastructures and services residents value most. So that does mean there's some cuts and not new additions. And ease the financial pressure by delaying select capital projects and replenishing reserves more gradually. And we have some slides to talk through that as well. There we go. 2,600 property owners participated in the annual dues survey. That was a really good response rate. Gives the survey firm, come on in.
I'm coming in.
Gives the survey firm high confidence that that's a representative sample of the community. You see a big change here. We've decreased the first year increase from 796 to 256 and spread it more evenly over 3 years. We've lowered the total assessment revenue, so what you would pay out over 3 years by $1,100 per property. 1,100.
1,100. I thought you said 100.
Yeah, 4.86 million total when you add it up. Remove, reduce for deferred projects. We just mentioned that, and focused on the priorities: infrastructure, maintenance, safety, and landscaping. Landscaping was always very interesting to us because it came out at the highest priority in the survey, even a little bit higher than the ancillary security services, which I thought was really interesting. But people do want to maintain the community, and we want to do it too. So this proposal sets us up to not do exactly what we wanted to do, but hit the key areas, we believe. First year increase was too high. It was 30%, now it's under 10%. You don't need to build your reserves. Industry standards, we won't get into the calculation, it's confusing, but they do say we need to be building our reserves as our costs go up. What we heard was you're building it too much too fast. So we're slowing that down. Doing work that isn't critical. We heard a lot about the Marsh Tower. You know, there's questions about who owns the property, International Paper, where it sits now in the marsh instead of off of the marsh, and the like. So what we've just done is we've had an engineering study completed. It says the Marsh Tower is safe to maintain, to keep open. We're going to keep doing light maintenance on it, but we're not going to replace it. It's not in the budget for this 3-year assessment cycle. If we can keep maintaining it for 3 years, great. And then we can have this conversation again in another 3 years if we need to do something different with it. Delegate Creek Boardwalk. We were going to replace that. That's the fixed pier going out to Delegate Creek. We get complaints on the boards and how well they're wearing and the walkability of it. But in the survey, that was really low as far as the funding priority. So we adapted and we adjusted and we said, okay, we're just gonna keep doing the maintenance. We're gonna increase the amount of maintenance we're doing, but we're gonna decrease the maintenance. We're just gonna continue, the maintenance that we're doing for it, which is replacing woods that are in really poor condition. But you're gonna see different sections that look different. And we had hoped to do something else, but that's okay. We have to work within the money that we're allocated. Oh, sorry, let me come back to this one. Roads and storm drains, I think we were pretty clear about those in the survey and elsewhere. You can't live out here if you don't have roads, and storm drains getting rid of the water. So we said those are non-negotiable, those are items that we have to protect, and regardless of the vote. The original dues increase, you see we had a 30% increase. Then we had minimal the next 2 years, but again, it was the bigger jump the first year. Now you see a 9.87, 9.3, and 8.35, so the amounts are decreasing. You still have a little bit of a jump the first year, but again, under the 10%. Still, close to what our operating was in capital reserves. This is what we think the split's gonna be over the next 3 years. Obviously, things can change. What you vote on are these dollars, and the board ultimately votes on what goes into those, what goes to operating and what goes to capital reserves. But that's our best estimate as of now about where the money's gonna go. For the first vote, we're starting to talk about what's different, what's been broken down here. You can see the dues allocated to the reserve fund is about 5 million less from the first vote to the second vote. As we've backed off some of our projects, whether it's the Marsh Tower or the boardwalk, you can see our spending is going down as well. We want to make sure that we're bringing in at least the amount of money in our reserves as what we're spending. You can see this does accomplish that, but you see we also do end up at about $2 million lower in the reserves balance, and that's also with deferring projects outside of this 3-year assessment cycle. So that's some of the major differences. Come on in. Yes. We talked about the roads and storm drains. Storm drains has not changed since the first vote. Roads changed slightly. We've increased the estimated lifespan of our tertiary roads. Our really small roads have 4, 5, 6 houses on them. We've moved them out from an 18-year to a 22-year replacement cycle, I think is what we settled on. So that's not a huge difference, but again, we said we have to have these. Right? That's, no matter what the vote is, we're having that. Now, a yes vote. What does it protect? You have bridges, structures, and equipment over the next 3 years of close to $3 million that we need to be spending on. Community Pass, this was an interesting one. Community Pass, we want to spend probably about double of this. And that was in the original proposal, but we have to make choices on where it is. And the survey was very clear. Community Pass are important to this community. They're a key part of the functionality of getting around. But as we're having to make decisions on how do we make this budget work that we can get something passed, we're rolling back to basically the level we've been spending the last few years instead of increasing on top of that level. Roads we've increased, Community Pass we're maintaining. Lagoons, including lagoon structures. These, with the lagoons and the lagoon structures, lagoons rated very high in the survey and the importance to people. And we see them as aesthetic, but obviously there's 151 lagoons and they're maintaining our storm drain system and our flood control and the like. So there are structures. The good news is we've just completed more recent evaluations since January when we put our numbers together, and there's several structures that are holding up better than anticipated, so we're able to push them into a future voting period. So that's helped us out a little bit. Gate access control equipment, that's basically the recording system for our 75-ish cameras, as well as call boxes, looking at a call box replacement. That number may be a little bit low as we look at it. We just had a lightning strike about 2 weeks ago that knocked out 3 of our call boxes. So those have been on order. So I love the thunderstorms. I love hearing them. And I don't like the outcome of what we're hearing from them, unfortunately. So that's where we are. So if we don't get a yes vote, roads and storm drains, still there. We'll have to start looking at cuts over here as far as the capital side goes. So what does that mean? Deferred repairs, escalated maintenance costs. I already mentioned we've increased the maintenance costs for the Delagal Creek boardwalk because we're not replacing it, but the wood's still getting older. We're having to spend the money on it. Potential special assessment. People talk about, well, just special assess us when you need to. It sounds great in theory, however, a special assessment has the same voting requirements as a regular assessment. It's a 60% quorum, and it's 2/3 of yes votes is what's needed for that. So that's a challenge for us. Continued depreciation of reserves. Again, industry standards would say we need to be building them. We're going to be building them slower than originally. And if we don't get this, then they're going to be going down, which ultimately, what is this board and what is this association supposed to focus on? And that's maintaining or enhancing property values. And we don't want to get to the point of seeing this as a decaying community. I saw a comment recently about, well, I'll be moving away in a few years, so hopefully it doesn't decline too fast or something. And so I understand that, but we need to maintain what we have and pay for what you're using as you're here. Services you support, I won't go through all of these, but again, landscaping rated really high, security right behind it. Those are our biggest departments. When you start talking about service cuts, that's where the money is. And so do we say, okay, this doesn't pass, so therefore we're not gonna run proactive patrols because we're gonna cut our staffing and security. We're not gonna run emergency assistance when the ambulance comes in, which can be as many as 6 times a day, and they help out with that. Again, those are our 2 biggest departments. Public Works, very important to the maintenance of the infrastructure that we have. Of course, we have our communications and administration. So those are the areas that we have not identified exactly what would be cut. We're now in the budgeting process for the next year, and the next 3 years, and the next 6 years that we're going through that. We're hopeful this passes because we've already scaled back. If this doesn't pass, then there will be noticeable impacts as far as the service levels and the capital spending that we can do, and the reserve balance dropping further down. We talk about this, we're like a city. You don't think about what all we have out here, but we have and have to maintain 91 miles of roads, 33 miles of community paths, 87 miles of storm drains. We're pretty lean, we have 81 employees. So all of us are working together to maintain what we have out here and trying to be respectful and responsive of the environment that everybody's challenged with, like we are too, of the rising costs. Our property and casualty insurance gone up over the last 3 years, I think 40%. We just got a quote for health insurance this coming for next year. They think it's going to be a 15% increase. So you have these different cost pressures that we're having to deal with, just like everybody else is. Increasing petroleum costs means increasing costs for asphalt, for the roads. But we're working our best to hold the line on something that the community will support. So with that, I think that's our last slide, and we'll open it up to any questions. We also have our budget analyst, Caden, online, so he's got his computer ready that if we have a detailed question that we need to get an answer to, we can put a pause on it and he can come up with it and share it with us. So who has the first question? Yes.
I just want to know about the roads. It seems like we're constantly getting the roads repaved in the same areas. It's like, and it's very expensive. And what's the deal? Do we have to pay every time they come back out to repair something?
Yes, that's a good point. So with our roads, one of our issues that we have is our base structure, that we're basically on sand out here. So if you're from the Northeast, you have a rock base and that works better. So a good example is when we did Landings Way South with Bennett Paving earlier in the year, and we still had a bumpier ride than we wanted because the base was still not in good condition. So they came back out at their cost to repave. At that same time, we paid a little bit extra to work on the base because we needed some work on the base. But at their cost, they've always been a good partner. Are they 100% perfect? No. We had the one issue at Franklin Creek North a few years ago, and they came back and did that at their own cost. We had a big rain event while the road was open. So it's a mix of our base isn't great, which we're taking another look at, and the materials that are required. There's up to 40% recycled materials required in the asphalt. So crews will be out there literally pulling shingles out of the asphalt and then saying, send this load back, this is not good, we have to work through that. We just had a meeting last week with Bennett and a new partner that they have under an umbrella company looking at a total reclamation of asphalt project where we can say, all right, where are our trouble spots in the community? We're getting core samples done. Where are our trouble spots? They would go down 8, 9, 10, 12 inches, fix the base, and then come back and do asphalt on it. That's gonna double the cost, but we're hopeful that will double the lifespan as well. So we're fix the base that needs to be fixed and have the base be good for another 50 years, we're hopeful. And then not have to do the paving quite as often. Because I'm with you. I mean, I even looked at that with the main gate. I guess we repaved that 2 years ago. And I said, what are we doing? We just did this like 5 years before. And what's going on? So the issues we were having at the main gate were heavy trucks coming in and pushing the asphalt as you're making turns, and it's pliable and malleable and that kind of stuff. And so with that one, we did about 3 times more asphalt than before. So we're hopeful that's gonna last longer. We're trying. We've gone from 1.5 inches to 2 inches of asphalt in other areas. I said, why don't we do concrete at the main gate? You know, like I'm used to being in Florida or on some of the interstates and the concrete. And the answer is it takes so long to cure, you'd have to keep the main gate shut for, say, a month. And I don't think the residents would take too kindly to that. And I don't think people would know who are not here how to get around, because that would solve the issue for 40 years or 50 years at that point. So I hear exactly what you're saying. We agree. We're trying to come up with a way of incorporating our milling, so the asphalt millings where they tear it up into the base, working with some newer technologies, and get a little pilot area that we can test this out on and see, will this really work in our area very well. I'm going to ask Bill, who's been very involved in this, if he has anything to add, and I know he's
and so part of your question is yes, we're going to be paving every year, okay? And the reason is that we have 1.3 million square yards of pavement. And we divide those roads, there's over 400 roads, we divide the roads into their use category and how heavy the traffic is. And so we have 11 roads that we consider to be primary roads, and we anticipate the life expectancy on the paving on those roads to deteriorate to the point that they need repair every 8 years. The tertiary roads, or excuse me, the secondary roads, we have 29 of those. We project a lifespan on those of 12 years. And on the tertiary roads, we expect a lifespan of 20 years or plus. And there's 370 of those. And if you look at the total roads, 25% of our roads are in primary, 25% in secondary, and 50% in tertiary in the number of square yards. And so if you project that cycle out as to how many yards of primary, secondary, and tertiary we have to pave every year to keep on cycle with those replacements, it's over 105,000 square yards. So that's how we calculate it. And so we go back and we keep record of when we've repaved roads and when we need to come back. And so we already have an outline for the next 3 years, which roads we plan to pave. But that is then subject to review to see if, based on our schedule, if those are still the ones that are in primary need. So we can adjust, and that really happens in the secondary and tertiary. Well, maybe it was its year to be paved, but it can wait another year. Yeah. Or it wasn't its turn, but it needs to be paved now. And so when you put all that together and combine that, that's how we come up with our plan. So there is a plan and strategy. So the question is, why do we have to repave every year? Is because that's part of the plan to keep the roads replaced and replenished on schedule. What hits us by surprise are failures. And so one of the things when we build our budget, we also build in an amount of about $250,000 a year for unplanned failures. So potholes that come up or sinkholes. So we just had a situation on Sweet Fern in Deer Creek where we had a sinkhole. And when we investigated the cause of that, it was because we had a hole in the storm pipe that ran underneath it that washed out the road. So we couldn't just fix the road, we had to come in and fix the storm pipe. We had to dig it up, we had to fix the hole, and then we slip lined it. So all of that was unplanned expense. It was 330 feet, about roughly the length of a football field. It cost $78,000 to repair. So this is not cheap. And so when you look at the dollar amounts and why we have to protect this, the reason that roads and storm drains and lagoons are critical to us is if we don't move the water off, we can't live here.
No.
And so the collection point is the roads. The roads collect most of the water that runs off, puts it into the storm drains, which then feed to the lagoons, which then have outfalls to the marsh.
Sure.
And so that whole cycle has to be maintained. And so that's why it's our priority, because we have a very high water table. When we go in and dig up a lot of the storm pipes to fix, when we get 18 inches below ground, we're in standing water. So that's what destroys our roads. It's water, water, and water.
One other point too, and Carl, you touched on it about the roads and the base and stuff. So if we don't follow sort of a prescribed life cycle of the asphalt, we risk deteriorating the base and exponentially increasing the rent cost.
Double
So
cost.
that so it'd be more expensive to do.
And so when we milled out Landing's Way South and took the asphalt up, we discovered we already have alligator cracking in the base. And our base that was originally done as a combination of sand and concrete. And so over time that water permeates in. And if you get the cracks in the asphalt, it gets down into the base faster and it will deteriorate the base. And like Carl said, that's going to cost, instead of $25 a yard to replace, $50 a yard to replace. So that's why we do the preventive maintenance, to try to extend the life of our roads.
Yes, Don.
A couple of other quick things to add on that. First, I think it's an important differentiation to understand that when we say the roads are gonna last this long, we use that as the figure that we budget how much we're gonna have to spend. That's not committing 10, 12, 15 years ahead of time that we're gonna do this road in 15 years. We're gonna have that much money available, and then we're gonna go look and see what roads need it the most.
Right.
And down here, with the kind of base that we're talking about, and the problem you don't see in the Northeast or the Midwest with the alligatoring and spidering that allows the water to seep through, that's what you're looking for. And anybody who's coming from somewhere else says the road looks fine. Yeah, it does, but the water's seeping down to it. The other thing I just want to point out quickly is because people have talked about Bennett and great, we get a cheap price, but they're not doing a good job. Well, Carl talked about pulling
Core samples.
the
Tickets, send them a truck back.
The millings.
No.
Shingles.
Shingles, yes.
It's not like Bennett is manufacturing its own asphalt. It's got to go to an asphalt producer. It gets a truckload full of asphalt and comes out to ask to pave our streets. Well, it's not that we're standing there telling Bennett, look at the junk that you've got in here. Bennett's seeing that. So, we can't do this. Well, you started going down that road and you got to stop and pull something out. You got a problem there that has to be fixed, and you can't fix it right away because you can't back up and strip it again. It takes two different pieces of equipment. So that's why
and in
some
this
of these
last
things.
cycle, we rejected the first load that came in
whole
multiple
load.
days.
Yeah.
Multiple days. We sent the load back.
And the regulations require us to use certain amount of
Yeah,
recycle, so it's not our choice.
And so
It's a federal regulation.
and there are fewer asphalt plants today.
We only have two in the.
Yeah, it's the other thing. And I will add, besides doing the core samples, there's more technology out there about using AI cameras where you can look at the roads and see, rating them better. Chatham County used that recently, and our public works on their public works didn't love the outcome of that, but there's more and more of that. So we're working through that to try to say, all right, what technologies can drive our roads, and use the AI component to say, all right, help us prioritize them. We do have people who run them, but this gives us another tool. And yes, Vicky.
Well, I was just gonna say, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of expertise behind figuring out this whole process of the roads and the storm drains. What I think our hope is, and the point of doing these sessions, is to get the homeowner to trust the fact that there is tons of science, there's tons of work, there's tons of planning and programming behind all of this. We just don't willy-nilly decide to go and pave roads. And when people say, why do you pave roads every year? We don't pave them unless we feel like they absolutely have to be paved to protect what's under the roads. So there's a lot of data and a lot of numbers, but that's not what's important. It's to try to get the homeowner to trust
there is a thorough process behind all of it.
You hear the passion from all of us about it, right? We've had all of these discussions, and are we paving too much? Are we not paving enough? Are we paving the right areas? Are we using the right process? So all of this goes into it with the Public Works Committee, our board, the Finance Committee. We all know more about paving than we ever signed up to do, right? So, yes.
I'm glad you covered the question of running cameras into the conduits to see where you have observable cracks or misuse, and that's become such a common practice in public works. One question I do have, though, is that coincident with the greater concern that I've heard voiced on the number of waste haulers, the sizes of their trucks as they've grown, and hence the larger weight that they're imposing, gross weight on the roads. I'm just curious, you don't currently impose some type of usage fee on the haulers. And have you seen examples where there are points in the runs that they make that they would historically always have to do a short stop braking, which would imply that there's a great place that you're going to see sheer damage to the road? If any of that's true, would there be the possibility of imposing, as municipalities do, an annual fee per truck, a stickered for the trucks of a particular firm, and therefore you would be able to observe if one particular truck is causing problems, you'd at least have a source of revenue, you'd get the truckers to be cognizant of the impact of their high-speed hit the brakes scenario. I mean, when you hear jack brakes, you know what a jack brake is?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's okay, so to address that, we do charge commercial vendors. We can take a fresh look at what trash haulers are charged, because you do have the weights. We used to have a provider here about 4 years ago who was leaking hydraulic fuel too, and that'll tear up your road. So we can take a fresh look at that. To your point about multiple haulers, my preference, we would have one contract with one thing, and you know, the community hasn't embraced that at this point, so we have to get creative. So thank you. We can definitely say the heavy equipment that is out here has a different rate structure than what we've been charging. And part of our budget cycle, we look at it every year, is all of the rates. So I know we're taking notes over there. So
I mean, I've lived through the meetings, EPA meetings, where this is a big topic, and you get into the fights between the municipality and the haulers as to do the municipalities, which you are,
right, quasi, yes,
have the right to impose on their trade.
right.
And I mean, you may have to get a legal opinion, can you do that? But it seems to me that you have a grounds for suggesting that certain gross weights,
Yes.
certain repetitive routes, give you a legitimacy to charging those haulers at a fee that reimburses you for the damage they do to
I
the
like that.
roads.
Thank you. Yes, appreciate it.
Hey, Carl,
Yes.
there's a question in the back here earlier.
Yes.
Don, when we had the water main break at Marshwood several months ago, was there any damage to the storm drain system also?
No.
This was in Marshwood,
It
we
was
had to
the
repave the road.
That was the utility.
The water pipe above the storm drain broke. It did not damage the storm drain itself.
So it did not damage the storm drain. So was that the responsibility of the water company or?
Yes,
Yes.
the water
So
company
you didn't
paid
pay
for
for
those repairs.
The water company.
Yeah, I think
Utilities
last week
of
we got a
Georgia.
check from.
Did we pay for the road repair because we're responsible for that and the water company fixed its own leak? Is that how it works?
They pay for the road too. So yeah, they sent us the check last
Would have
week.
been consequential damage, they would have been liable.
So they
So because they caused the damage, they paid us.
Yeah, the beautiful news of that was we already had the pavers mobilized in the contract with Bennett. We already had Southeast Pipe for doing the pipe work because we already had them in the area. And work already had happened because Utilities Inc. wanted to cut through one of the medians for safer ingress and egress of their facility. So there was already fill on site. We had to bring in a few dump trucks, but there was already fill on site to do. That's why we were able to do it so quickly, because of our partnerships that we had and the timing of the work. So it was the best case scenario it could have been. Yep. Other questions? Yes.
This is, in a sense, very much off the topic, but in looking at this page 53 of what was sent out, I was sort of interested to see that 2025 results will not be available until the completion of the 2025 annual financial audit. Again, this was just set out, so I don't know.
So this is the budget book, right?
Well, it was something you all sent out last week.
Okay, that was from the budget, I brought my budget book, so yes, that's from the budget book.
So that's a 6-month-old copy.
So, yeah, and so we've just talked about that, that's a good topic, because we're gonna change the timing of when we put our budget book out. The board is still gonna approve the budget in December, as always, but we're gonna wait until January so we have actual audited financial numbers that'll be in the budget that everybody can see before the annual meeting, so your exact topic is something we just talked
Well,
about
the
last
budget
month.
book was out months before, that was just a
Yes.
there was just a
We just-
resending to people, because the audit is completed, it's already
Right.
out, it's done.
Right.
So, but one of the reasons that we're doing that is when we released the budget book in October, we anticipated certain expenses being completed in the fourth quarter. Primary among those was the
Seawall.
completion of the dry stack and the completion of the seawall. Neither of those was completed, not of our doing, but because we couldn't draw the permits from Chatham County and the appropriate legislating parties to complete those. And so then we had to carry those numbers over into the 26 budget, and they're unbudgeted items in 26, which causes our 26 plan to look much worse. And so if we wait and don't publish that budget until January, till we actually know what we completed in that current year, then that will clear that up. And so that's one of the drivers as to why we're doing that. And we can set the budget and we'll have the close. Depending on when the audit completes, we may or may not have the audit completed before the annual meeting. That would be our desire.
We do, we always have
Well,
that.
we normally do, I know, but
Yeah.
just anticipating, that there
If
could,
we have to see
there could be
unaudited
delays.
financials,
But
yes.
that would be our intent, so that when we release that, it's complete, it's year end, and it's audited. And that makes then comparisons year to year much easier, because you don't have these carryovers that you have and that were significant for us last year.
Yeah, and then you don't have all the year-end estimates, this year-end actuals and everything. Hold on one second, because Lisa had a question, then we'll come back over there.
This is just a point, I think, to what Vicky said about, there is a lot of research and planning and all of this kind of stuff. The other thing that I hear a lot is, well, why don't you get some experts on the board? And I think that's what we do. We pull these people that have these years of experience, that was their field. So, but I don't think people understand.
Well, it's an interesting point, and we hear both sides of that. We had our senior staff drop in yesterday, and we had some conversation with an RV lot user, and we last year updated the spacing and made it more what we think easier to transit with the types of vehicles and equipment that people have in there. We worked with an engineering firm, and he didn't like the design, and so you have on one hand, well, you just do it as staff, but we're going to rely on engineers because they're the experts who do it day in and day out. So there is a mix. You have the on the ground historical knowledge of the staff and the board and the committees, and don't forget the committees of dozens and dozens of volunteers. And then as you need, you bring in the expertise from outside the community. So it is a balance.
Carl, one other thing to point out, the oft-raised debacle at the main gate, that was a professional engineering company that told us to do that. That's what we needed to do. We took the advice of the professional engineering community and got whacked for it. So, it's one thing to say, why don't you have a specialist? Well, you have specialists, and then you don't look at the specialist and say, so now they're getting the board. Why don't you guys know what you're doing?
And it was done for safety. I mean,
Yeah.
they ranked safety issues and that was it. And that was their
Yeah.
recommendation.
And it
Well,
was,
that's why I say we're always going to come up to bat and take a swing. We're not always going to get ahead. But if we're not trying to improve stuff, then what are we doing here?
I had one resident railing at me that we wasted $150,000.
Yeah.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
It was what?
Under 5.
Under $5,000, because all the other work was being done. This was just some striping work we had done.
Yeah. So, that's yes.
Question about your budgetary process. So if you have in the budget appropriated $100,000 for a project. And because of exterior impact, you aren't able to fully utilize that funding nor complete the project. You don't have the right to carry it over to next year into the next year's budget as an action, or just.
So it depends on whether it's an operating expense or a reserve expense. Okay, if it's a reserve expense, we don't really do a year-by-year P&L.
No, I wouldn't expect so.
So if the completion of the dry stacks doesn't get completed, the money's still in the reserve, so we just draw it out. But it won't show up in what planned expenditures were for that budget year compared to what was planned in +25.
So that causes confusion.
So that causes confusion.
Yes.
It doesn't.
Which is
Okay.
why municipalities
In an
have a
operating
provision for
expense.
carryover.
In an operating
You can carry it
expense.
over, that's not the problem.
No, but a reporting characteristic.
Right.
Yes.
The accounting rules require that you
Yes.
cannot account for that money until you incur the expense.
But if we delay publishing the budget by 2.5 months, even though it's approved, then we know exactly what's in there. We have a year.
There's no
Then you'll have concern on.
Correct.
I think everybody's gonna appreciate seeing actuals versus estimates in our documents.
As to going back to the haulers,
Yes.
you mentioned the spill, whether it was petroleum or some other spill. One of the things that I've seen drive the regulation of haulers has been poor performance like that, and by having massive registration stickers on the truck, residents can complain and say, that truck, that number.
Yeah, I
Go after
appreciate that, thank you. We can look at numbering as well. Yes.
One other question, with the new changes to the main gate that's coming along next year with the county, will we have to do anything to prepare for that? The light that's supposed to be going in there, whatever they're doing?
I'm sorry, they have so many different projects with that, I had to get my brain on the right line, right, okay, so.
The shopping center.
It's
Right at the main gate, shop.
at the main gate, so
Four-way stop.
the four-way stop, they're putting in a traffic light. They're at the same time, they're gonna redo the traffic light at Lake Street for 2 reasons. One, so it can get back to where they can synchronize the signals. But also, as you're coming onto the island and turning left into the village, that's where we keep having wrecks.
Yeah.
And so they're gonna make a standardized, allowable signal that's there that follows the guidelines. And our understanding is they're gonna move over the light a little bit too. And they're also not going to allow a permissive left turn on a flashing yellow. I believe that's gonna come out. We haven't seen the final design yet.
Red or green is what they told me.
Both ways?
Yeah, so it's
Turning into Oak Ridge left, because that's dangerous. And turning into
this
the village left.
this so focus when we had a recent meeting with them was going into the village. I don't know if they're gonna change it the other side of the time. But I know countywide about 6 years ago, they started going to this permissive turn on the flashing yellow. But since we're having a crash there every month, I think that's why they want to do something different. So we have that. At the same time, they're looking at doing a dedicated right-hand turn lane to go to Green Island Road. So that should help with some of the backup there as people are going down to South Harbor, Moon River, Grand Harbor, that area like that. You know, certainly we have concerns about traffic backing up to our gate, especially rush hour traffic leaving in the morning. These are the things they're gonna have to work through, synchronizing them and getting them set up properly. And also monitoring them remotely so they can make some changes on it. Right now, none of that's set up. So like when we've done paving and we've had to push people through Oak Ridge, we have to manually call them and say, hey, for the next week and a half, change the timing on this light, and they have to come out and all that kind of stuff. So we're hopeful those upgrades will help. You know, it was that or a roundabout, and the community roundly said no roundabouts. They're actually, I see the headshot. I like roundabouts, but I see the headshot. You do have to have the width.
We can't figure out fully stops.
Yeah, roundabout you have to have the width, and it's a bigger project and a more expensive
Don't
project.
you have to pay a lot more
And the
attention?
shame of it is that the statistics show it
Maybe the
reduces
other guy
accidents.
isn't.
Reduces serious accidents for sure. There might be a slight increase in fender benders based on, depending on what study and where you are. But again, I like them, but the community
Yeah,
doesn't.
you need-
That's
Lots of room.
And I mean, I'm going to get the players wrong, but we've this year or last year started we've been trying for a long time to get like the county's attention and have sort of an open forum so we can go over the issues.
Yes.
They can understand our issues before they're
Yeah, Don and I
problems.
recently
And I know-
met with the leadership of
Correct.
Chatham County, and so we
Brian's involved in that. so I
Brian
know
Dunphy
there's-
on our board has started a government relations committee. We had it years ago. We've restarted that.
Yeah.
We're trying to have better relationships and discussions on topics just like this, the four-way stop and the other. And it's really good because Sean Burgess, Public Works Director, Chad Bundy, a captain in the, we now call it Community Safety Department, formerly Security Department. When we met with their engineering team, they were even saying, looking at some designs with us, said, well, we want to put something up here so visitors to the landings know which lane to be in. So maybe we put like landings visitors or something like you would see as you go to resort areas without making it look like a resort area, but get people in the right lane at the right time. So they really want our input, which is encouraging. Yes.
One thing I've noticed is that the two websites that Chatham and Georgia have for that intersection, I've talked to people don't even know those websites with the proposed plans and the drawings are sitting there.
We've directed them towards that a couple of times, especially related to the Green Island Road proposed path. The question is how often are they updating stuff on the public site versus really what they have. But we can, then there's our communications director. We can, as we're having more of these, push them towards that. The other thing is they've said they'll come out and do a town hall, probably in one of the churches, so everybody's available to do it, to talk about projects like these. So we're hopeful this fall we can get them out here to give everybody an update.
Who's the operating body in this? Is it the county?
The county is the county. It is.
Do they have a chief engineer who maintains contact and so therefore would have accessible and be willing to keep the drawings and the engineering notes up to date so that they'd be available?
I can't.
I'm trying not to be funny.
Government doesn't always work.
Right. I understand. Believe me, I've been there.
It's not going to go online until it's ready for prime time. So I would say that.
But we're recorded.
No, I get that, but that's it. That's true. Until something's ready to share, it's not going to get
I
shared.
stay on topic.
Yeah. All right, go ahead. Something else. Yes.
Two asides. One, on what you were all just talking about, county, state, whatever. Everybody saw those duck pads being put down along Diamond Causeway. This is really totally meaningless. I called the county, and the lady said, "Oh, I don't know. Let me check for you." So she said, "I checked with the superintendent, and he doesn't really know what all those pads are there for. He thinks it might be something to do with guardrails."
No, so
Well, the point is,
Yeah.
nobody talks because it looks like it's the electric company or something.
it's Georgia
Yeah,
Power,
right.
and that's so they don't tear the marsh up.
Yeah, no, I understand why. It's just that nobody talks to one another.
Yes, that's true. All right,
My
Angel,
other-
okay, these are all interesting comments, and we can come back to them, but Angel,
I have one question.
Yes.
So it's going to wind up in 2020. I assume this is going to be passed because people say it's. They're going to say it's 10%, not 30. A third of the people won't read it. A third of the people won't really look at the numbers, and it's going to pass. That would be my assumption. But when you look at the numbers for reserves, in 2029, they're 50% more than this year.
No.
And well, I got 984 for this year, 984, and it's projected to go to 1575.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
You're
thought
talking about the
said
spending.
Allocation, not the
About
balance.
spending.
Yeah,
What?
On the allocation, not the balance.
Yeah, right, yeah.
that's where I was confused there. Yes, that's on purpose. If you remember with the last vote that was not successful, 96% of the increase was going towards reserves. That's where a big bugaboo is. We've got to get the reserves built up so that we can pay for these increasing infrastructure
Well,
costs.
I'm skeptical about the reserves, but it's
Right.
a long involved
Yes.
subject and not anybody
Yes.
cares about. But that's anyway, the amount of money, 984 to 1575 in 3 years.
Yes.
And I looked at that same page 56, and it shows that over the last 5 years, the expenditures have been going up nicely. So it's not like, so all of a sudden, why a 50% jump over 3 years?
Because, yes, I can address that at a high level, and I'll get Kane to jump in if I need to. We've been spending about $2 to $2.2 million a year on road paving. We need to be spending $3 million or more. We've been spending between $750,000 and $1 million on storm drains. We need to be spending $1.5 million or more on storm drains. So those two categories alone are the main driver of where that is. I mentioned in the first vote, we wanted to increase our spending on community paths from $225,000 to about $325,000 a year. We backed it back down to the $225,000 for this vote. But these are areas that as a 54-year-old community, we're seeing the age on it. A good example is if you watched the video from Sweet Fern Retreat, that's a concrete storm drain. Well, we had the assumption those were going to last 80 to 120 years. They don't last up, Schumberg, White Rose, we're talking about. That's where all the money goes. That's where all the money goes. But, so our assumptions have been faulty. And because you have where those are together, they're separating, they're causing the potholing in the road that we fixed twice. And then now we're having to come back and fix them. So, and that's in Deer Creek. That's where you think that's the newest part of the community.
But the other reason is the spending has been limited because we're limited to the amount of money we've been able to raise, and we have our dues and have not been high enough in the past. So it's why we're always playing catch up.
So I explained to this lady over here that we hope to pave 105,000 square yards annually. We've been paving about 77. Okay, so that's your 25% increase right there in that cost. The other thing that's happening is paving costs are escalating faster than the inflationary rate. And so they're going up 7.5%, 10%. And so as you try to catch up on the amount of yards you need to pave, that cost is higher than what it's been in the past. And so if we look at this, if I go back in 2021, we allocated $952 for reserves, $949 in 22, $1,049 in 23, $1,126 in 24, $915 dropped in 2025, and $984 this year. We're asking for $1,200, and what we planned, $1,385. So we're trying to get back up, and Bob talks about reserves, and he's right. You know, reserves are, I describe it as art and science as to what it should be, and how to calculate that. And that's based on the age of your community, what type of infrastructure you've got in there. In 2024, we had more reserves than what we will end up this year or next year, okay? We're not trying to increase reserves, we're trying to recover and replenish the reserves that we've already spent. In 25 and 26, we're going to deplete the reserve amount by more than $1.5 million. So in those first 2 years of the next cycle, we're just trying to get back what we've already spent and get back to that level. And I think the most important thing was this slide here where it says, we're going to ask for 18 million and we're going to spend 18 million. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we're not in a cycle like we've been last year and this year where we're spending more than what we're getting. But yet our infrastructure has to be supported or we can't live here. So that's the explanation for the big increase. What's different from this in the first vote is we tried to get that recovery all in the first year. And that's why we asked for 30%. Because we didn't think we should allow our reserves to be depleted. The community said we can't deal with that. We can't handle it. Spread it out. The survey said that people valued the reserves and they recognize the importance of that. Just build it more gradually and don't try to build such an excessive amount that is unreasonable. And so that's what we heard, and that's what this budget proposes. Slower recovery of what we've already spent and deplete it from our reserves, and not trying to build it so high, and keeping that at the recommended minimum levels. So the other thing that's happening is, remember that our asset value, which is how you calculate reserves, is increasing. From last year to this year, it went up 10% alone. It went from 60 million to 66 million. So if you're trying to have a reserve level, you got to be increasing that just to keep up with the inflation. We anticipate that will increase even more dramatically in the next couple of years. Our roads alone at the current rate that it cost us to replace it. If we try to replace every road next year, it costs us between $35 and $40 million just for the roads. So that's the biggest chunk of our reserves. Storm drains is almost nebulous. We know they're starting to fail. We know we have to have those. And so there's money to continue to increase the investment in storm drain repairs, which we haven't focused on in the past because we didn't have a good sense of it. We didn't have the ability to measure it and which ones we needed to work on. And that's why we've invested in the cameras to go in and look at those storm drains to say, here's what we've got to do. Here's the most critical ones. We've started from the age of the community and saying these are the ones we believe would be most critical. The other thing that we've done in the last couple of years, we've started to sequence. If we're going to come in and pave a road, let's look at the drains under that road, because the last thing we want to do is pave that road and then have a sinkhole and have to come back and redo it. We don't have the money for those kind of mistakes.
No.
The other thing that's sort of a mindset issue is everybody thinks of inflation in terms of CPI. But when it comes to doing road work, it's not the CPI, it's the Highway Construction Cost Index, which is also maintained by the US government. 24 to 25, that index went up 65%. So a huge increase in the costs that you don't think about, because you're over here thinking about what the CPI is, which isn't relevant to TLA either, because we don't have travel and vacation time and food and things like that.
On the topic of storm drains, based upon what we know, based upon what we think we know now, did Branniger do a good job at the time, 50 years ago, when they put those storm drains in, or should they have done something differently?
So the community was not all done by Branniger.
Yeah.
Remember?
That's a key.
That's true.
Okay, so the plantation area, which is now Palmetto, was done by another developer that went bankrupt.
Right.
Okay, how much money do you think they invested in their infrastructure and their resources?
That's
for
what I'm
family?
asking you.
Yeah, and so that bucket got kicked on down.
I knew the answer to that part of the question.
Yeah, and so we think the engineering design that went into this island is amazing.
Correct.
And how to maintain it and sustain it is a challenge for us. But I think overall the plan was done right to the best of the abilities. I think people tried to install it correctly. Carl mentioned concrete storm drains. You don't anticipate the concrete failing, but what does fail are the seals. And so that's where you start to see those failures. And so even you got nice concrete. And so that's why instead of replacing those pipe, we're using cured in place piping, where we can come in and run a sleeve down in there, cure it and seal that, and now we have a solid run with no seals for the whole section of that pipe from drain to drain. And so that process should give us another 40 or 50 years where we can do that. In some places, the pipes are so corroded, so particularly in the Palmetto area, there's a lot of corrugated pipe, and that just totally corrodes, and we have to dig that up and replace it.
Is that Orangeburg style pipe? Bluntly cardboard coated with asphalt corrugated?
No, corrugated metal.
Okay.
So,
All right, any other annual D's questions? Yes.
Just in general, your numbers are no doubt supportive. And I don't know whether you're going to have another instance where there are going to be sizable votes against it. But I would think you would anticipate that, for instance, talking about the COLA. The problem is there's no one single COLA. The CPIW, the CPI urban, you want to go through all of that. But if you do that to the specific point of a given expense and show it, particularly graphically, you make your argument in front of people.
We even did a video on that.
I didn't say that.
No, I mean, we have tried to get that
But
information
we also
out.
had people that gave us feedback that the graphs were confusing. We had feedback that the graphs were confusing when we tried that. So that everybody learns differently or receives information differently. And so we try to hit all the medians and all the different methodologies. And that's why we hold these meetings, so that we can try to
This is
answer
fine.
questions.
But it doesn't show, I mean, you're looking amazingly a gradient on a curve of expense can be very instructive. And you're not showing that. And if you say, look, here's the cost. Asphalt is no longer $75 a ton, as I remember it back when I had to be worrying about it. Okay? And what has it gone to? And that's the cost that's embedded in the cost of those roads. There it is.
So, one of the things that, as treasurer, concerns me about this budget and what we're asking for is that our expense is front-end loaded and our revenue is back-end loaded. And that's the inverse of what you would desire as a financial officer. So what we've done is we've come back, is in the surveys, what we did here was people said, we don't want you holding our money. If you need additional money, come and ask us for it. And so that's where the reduction in the reserves comes in. That's the risk that we're taking and that you have asked us to take as the property owners here. And so hopefully that doesn't come to fruition, but that's how we've tried to bare bone this to maintain what we've got and not ask for any more than the minimum of what we need.
That's a good message to get out.
Yeah.
I mean, for us, to get out to
And that's what we
friends
need.
groups, et cetera.
So thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it, especially on this rainy day. We're around if you have, it's always a rainy day. If you have any more questions, just let me know and we'll get the answers for you. So thank you.